You are now tuned in to the Bass Gorilla Podcast. You are about to discover the best kept secrets in bass music and EDM production. Through exclusive interviews with the world's favorite producers and record label owners. Dubstep, drum and bass, Neurohop, glitch hop, and other futuristic bass music. Brought to you by
Robert Fumo.
Hello and welcome to the Bass Gorilla Podcast. My name's Robert. I will be your host. We have another great show for you today. We sat down with Vorso. If you're not familiar with this guy, or perhaps don't even know what Halftime is, Vorso is a trailblazer in this genre. We picked up his most recent EP, Spectre, and peppered through this interview as snippets of it so you can get a taste of what his style is. He's got a bunch of music soon to be released on Inspected Records. And before we get into that, let me give you a little heads up on bassgorilla.com's new website and membership rates. These rates are super discounted, and you can't imagine the amount of content that we currently have and have in store for you in the very near future. We're always releasing new stuff. So do yourself a favor and head over to bassgorilla.com after you listen to this interview. And without further ado, here is Vorso.
I am Vorso. I'm a music producer from South UK, which explains the accent. And I make drum and bass and halftime.
Could you describe what halftime is?
Yeah, it's a really loose term, as most people use it at the moment. Like, it's basically when you take drum and bass and you have half as many snares. So it's got more emphasis on like the 1 and 3 beat. So it's kind of like, it's almost like fast dubstep, you could say, or something like that. It's got more of a headbangy feel than drum and bass does normally.
I absolutely love it, and I'm gonna confess to just picking up your Spectre EP. My favorite being the double check.
Oh, that was a fun one. That was so. Basically, all of those tunes were kind of things that I was making for an EP for Inspected, and they were all the tunes that either I or he wasn't quite keen enough on to make it on there, didn't quite fit the theme, that kind of thing. So, like, I just thought, I've got all of these tunes, they all kind of fit together, so I'm just going to put those out as an EP first, like, because I hadn't really put out like a large EP like that before. So I thought, might as well see how it does. I wasn't really even expecting it to do as well as it ended up doing. But yeah, I was really happy that people were open-minded to that. Probably the weirdest sound design was probably in Mass. That tune was very weird to work on. I started out with that little wob sound that's in it at 140 beats per minute, and I thought I want to do something really stupid, like something that will really, no one will know what to do in a club if that plays. And I thought I will have a build up that speeds up from 98 beats per minute to 140. And at some point when I was automating that, I accidentally deleted the bit of automation and it just all played at 98. And it sounded absolutely weird because it was all stretching stuff on beats mode. It sounded really off. And I thought, I'm going to work with that instead. And that's why it sounds so offbeat, because there's bits like that are sort of hitting 5 times per beat. There's all kinds of stuff. There's triplets, straight rhythms. It's all over the place. My mum plays violin a bit, and Like at school, I started studying music, but I wasn't actually that big on it until I kind of like probably the end of school, and I started discovering all of the sound design stuff, and just getting like programs off the internet, things like that, finding out that you can actually make the shit yourself. And yeah, I just started getting into it via that. So I have no actual like music theory background or anything. So, because I'd say like I have been making music for about maybe 6 or 7 years or so now, and I started out like faffing about with Sibelius 6 and stuff like that, making orchestral things. So I don't even know if that counts like as making music really. Like that. It's interesting. I kind of fell backwards into drum and bass stuff. Like, so I really like Skrillex. I've been hearing his stuff on the radio. Everyone should like Skrillex. It's just fun music, really good to listen to. And through him, I found Cohen Sam with that absolute batshit insane remix that they did. Really love that one. And then from Cohen, that kind of got me down through everyone who was inspired by them. And I think I found Upscale through Roger Wilco. And Inspected eventually, places like that. And then like right at the bottom level, right at the level of everyone who was like really inspired by all of those people, I then found out that they were also inspired by drum and bass, and I started working my way up drum and bass and listening to that. And it was like quite a big thing for me, realizing that there's been all of this drum and bass for years and I wasn't aware of it happening. I've mainly listened to all the music that my friends make, really, like everyone who's in this group chat. So like Signal, Canopy, trying to think of some other names, Wings, Grey Coat, people like that. I really like their stuff. They're doing some really fresh drum and bass. Yeah, there's this group chat, Music Squad, that I joined like after Neuro Hop Forum went down. I don't know if you remember that. There was this forum where like everyone was basically in the early days, and after that, I just found this group chat of a whole load of people who knew each other from there, and basically became really good friends with them. And yeah, we've sort of taught each other stuff. I listen to their music a lot, and we've had a couple of meetups as well, which are nice. Sort of going to gigs in Bristol, stuff like that. I like having time away from it. I like doing another job and stuff like that, and doing it on the side, because I feel like the time when you spend not making music is time like for your subconscious to think about it and get much better ideas. And you get burnt out so easily working on stuff all day. So for me, I find my best balance is not doing it full time. Basically, the way it's working out at the moment is that I work the day, then I'll do some like sound design every evening, and then on one of the weekdays I'll just make a tune and then either like refine it over the next week or just finish it and leave that. So it tends to kind of just fit into like this rota basically. And I think that's part of how I work quite quickly is just spending less time on it and doing more. Yeah, Ableton for about 4 years now. Haven't upgraded to 10 yet. I'm too used to 9, I think. I deliberately try and make my project files look as nasty as I possibly can, so that it convinces me to not like try and not look at them for too long. Like I'll take all of my basses are green, all my leads are reds, pads are blue, and like drums grey colours. So just it looks visually disgusting, and it makes me want to delete all of the clips and stem them down as much as possible, because otherwise I'll spend ages like colouring stuff. And at the end of it, you've got a colourful project, but what have you done? You know, normally like my go-to is obviously like Massive or Operator, stuff like that. And I try and think, if I've used those a lot, I'll go and, I don't know, do something with Absinthe or Hey Bazille. I really like that one lately. It's like modular basically. It's semi-modular. You sort of drag cables on your screen, make patches like that. And I just like finding odd combinations of feedback, stuff like that. And then just seeing like what's the weirdest thing I can make to start out with, and then I'll just work through resampling that until it turns into like a Reese or something. The latest thing that I've got, which I'm really enjoying, is a microphone preamp, and I like it because basically I'm abusing it. And using the tube processor in it as actual distortion, and it just makes them sound that much fatter. Like, and I also got this Alesis 3630 off eBay as well, and I've been running drums through that, and it just makes them like really snap. So like I'm getting a little bit into analog processing as well, just finding old stuff and running things through it, seeing how it sounds. It's always like a balance between adding harmonics and taking them away. Like you've always got to think about, like, when you distort something, you're adding in harmonics, you're changing the way it sounds, you're making it sound louder. When you filter something, you're taking stuff away, unless you're doing like big boosts or something. And it's always trying to like balance that while keeping it sort of strong, blocky sounding, like powerful, and also having enough filtering in it to give it some movement. So I normally try and balance like there being some some distortion and some filtering and some distortion to bring it back. So it's always like trying to find the path through the middle that doesn't leave it sounding like crushed and over processed, or it sounding really, really filtered and notchy. It's a lot of third party. Like Camel Fat is a must-have. It's just nothing sounds quite like it. In fact, with all distortion, it's like, particularly if you're doing heavy distortion, low, dry, wet always, or if you're doing little bits of distortion, you can have a high, dry, wet. It's always trying to find like making the most impact on the sound with the minimum amount of processing. So I always try and go quite gentle with stuff like basses.
Let's go to work.
I would love to see your workflow. I'm curious if we can't get you to do some work for us.
Oh yeah, I'd definitely be down for that. I remember your videos that you did help me out early on a lot. So like I'd easily repay the favor.
So then you owe us.
Got me. There's a lot of artists in America who are playing out Halftime because they're dubstep artists. People expect like tunes whichever Halftime beat, and it's just speeding that up a little bit to 172 makes it that much more kind of hype, I guess. So my tunes are being played by people like Bass Nectar, and trying to think of some others off the top of my head.
How does that feel? So like when you have, so does a homie of yours in the States just call you and say, guess what? I was at this Bass Nectar show and I just heard your tune.
Yeah, pretty much. I've got actually my favorite video of all time is I'd sent this remix for Run DMT to Nolan Frequent. And he, like that same evening, went to see Noisier play. and there's just this video of him like him as they play it, and I still don't know how they got hold of the remix, but they played that out, and he's like going crazy. So that's one of my favorite like moments like that. And it is really, really nice for me seeing like the reaction people have to some of this stuff being played out. And like I'd love to see that myself in person at some point. Yeah, it's funny for me actually hearing the response to Halftime, because a lot of people a lot of people who are sort of old school drum and bass heads don't actually like it very much, like because they feel it's a bit lower energy in a set. But I remember some of the events that I've been to, like I've been to a couple of Critical nights and things like that. For me, in a drum and bass set, the halftime bits are just the best bit for me. Like I have really good memories of I can remember, I think it was one of the upbeats playing that little tiny halftime bit of Get Deaded, and like that was the moment for me. Normally I'll make like a tune in about a day that is sort of like, I'd say 70% there, and then I'll dip into it occasionally until it gets there. Like for Commanders, the one that's out on Inspected, I basically made that like round about Christmas, and then I just forgot about it, and then I came back a month later and thought, fuck it, I'm finishing this. And it's very different from how it was in the original version. Like the original version was weak because it was full of gaps. But I think having some time away from the project gives you some time to think about what's going to go in those gaps. Even if you aren't thinking about it every day, your mind is just always going to be coming up with some patterns and something to do. If you're not working really quickly on a bit of music, if you're not like in that state where you're just flowing through it, then there is always going to be some kind of reason for that. Like you're feeling insecure about the idea, or you want to work on something else. Actually, there's like, even if you can't tell on the surface level what that reason is, like your subconscious is going, oh, I don't like this. And for me, that is like always a flat out symbol. Just stop working on that bit of music and do what you want to do. Because like one session where you're really into it, really focused for even just like 2 hours will always be better than like spending a whole week dipping into an idea, not coming up with anything good, and having to scrap bits of it, that kind of thing. I actually love doing mixdowns. Like, I know a lot of people who don't, but for some reason I find it's like the last stage of the tune, and it's sort of where you're making it sound. I guess it's the most technical, almost like you're trying to fit the parts of it together. So for me, it means pretty much EQ on everything, like sometimes multiple EQs, and just looking at something like Span and seeing how everything sits together. Trying to find if there's sort of any gaps in the mix down, if there's either frequency gaps or sort of changes as it goes through, and changes in volume as well. So I'm trying to keep everything at a sort of constant level. That said, you want to have dynamics between the sections, but if your first drop is like much louder than your last drop, it won't sound good when you master it, or it won't sound as good. I know a lot of people have different opinions on what you should have on your master, if you should mix with a mastering chain on. And like different people get different results, and for me, I find the cleanest result is just doing nothing on the master and then mastering it separately. I think with EQ as well, it's like people. I think people kind of think of EQ as something which has got to be like static all the time, or anything to do with mixing. People like put on a multi-band compressor or something to fix one problem that appears once in the tune. And for me, I just automate an EQ. I just have an EQ on for that bit and then off for the rest. And like that is almost the same as just splitting something off onto a separate track and EQing it separately. But I find that's quite a cool way of working, and it's a good quick fix. And it doesn't matter that there's a technically better way of doing it with like multi-band compression or whatever, because if it works and it sounds good, then it is good. Got my EP, which is coming out on the 20th of April, so that's out on Inspected, which is like something I've been working on for almost a year now, I reckon, these bits of music, and they kind of cross over loads of different genres, or different takes on Halftime. And it was really fun for me just trying out some stuff that I've never done before with music. And yeah, it's some of the most fun I've ever had working on projects. Certainly some of the longest ones that I worked on. Since I normally like finish tunes quite quickly, working on something for almost a year is like quite unusual. I don't actually put that much thought into the branding side of it. Like I came up with something at the start which kind of works, and I've stuck to that so far. My the name Vorso came from Canopy Tim looking in the Latin dictionary and finding something cool. And my logo was made by Evan False Noise. So the only thing that I did was the music. But I try and keep to like a sort of design theme of like this text and the logo being as recognizable as possible. And yeah, I only like very recently ever even had sort of press shots done or anything like that. So like mostly it's been my SoundCloud's quite impersonal. My Twitter tends to be just shit that I'm thinking about. So I'm probably not the most consistent person to ask about branding. I think it's a bit of a balance as well, because I know a lot of people who take like their brand and an alias 100% seriously, and they're like their entire Twitter is just completely impersonal and stuff like that. And like there's nothing wrong with that. That is, you know, a perfectly valid way of doing it, but I couldn't do that myself because I don't feel that would be honest to like how I am. So I just kind of like the aim of my music is just for people to enjoy it and maybe to make people laugh even. So like that's how that's sort of how I conduct all of my Facebook and Twitter and stuff, is just like me, because at the end of the day that's all that's actually going on is when you're making music, it's just a bunch of people and their friends doing it.
Thank you for, you know, having a sit down with us. And
anytime. It's been nice being a part of it, because as I say, this like Bass Gorilla has been something that I've been following for quite a long time.
Well, I can't again thank you enough, and everybody listening, do yourselves a favor, head over to our buddies' SoundClouds and Facebooks and Twitters and pick up this Spectre EP. And I believe you have another EP out previous to this one too, right?
I have an EP with Flex out, which is 3 tunes, and that has Needle on it, which is the one that's done quite well in the States. Nice.
So pick those up. Everybody get out there and support these artists, because they need to quit their 9-to-5s. Even though some of them enjoy them, they really just need to be globetrotting. And again, brother, thank you. And we're going to talk off camera now. And
sure.
we're going to, we're going to get you to teach us how to make some of the music that you make. But say goodbye to the crew, and thanks again, brother.
See you, everyone.
Dubstep, drum and bass, Neurohop, glitch hop, and other futuristic bass music. Brought to you by